War to Start All Wars, Waiting for Hitler, 1914 to 1929, Chapter 7, Things Fall Apart, 1918 through 1932. Revenge. Just a corporal at the end of World War I, Adolf Hitler was bitter and blamed a lot of people for Germany's loss. They included German leaders who gave the soldiers a stab in the back, the Jews, the Allies, communists in Germany, which is ironic because Hitler formed the National Socialists, who also wanted to control everyone. The difference between Hitler's socialism and the socialism of the communists was Hitler allowed business people to retain their property, except if they didn't do what he wanted, make what he wanted, behave the way he wanted, they did not survive. Sore winners, the Treaty of Versailles. Meanwhile, as now the unemployed Hitler seethed, the Allies screwed up the peace with the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler hated everything about it, and he railed against it in speech after speech. But in the early 1920s, all that got him was arrested. The photo shows his release from Landsberg prison in December 1924. He was convicted of treason, which will get you executed in some countries, but they gave him 5 years. Instead of him serving 5 years, he served 7 months. Hyperinflation, June 1921 to January 1924. To cope with the post-war depression, the German government tried printing money to fix things, and they inadvertently wiped out everyone. German overprinting of money, a wheelbarrow of money could not buy a loaf of bread. Every saber was wiped out. 1 German mark became worth 1 trillionth of its former value, leading to massive unemployment, strikes, and starvation. These crises led to street violence between opposing political parties like the Socialists and the Communists. Ultimately, the Germans defaulted on their foreign debt. Hyperinflation. But just as Hitler hoped to take advantage of the chaos, the Americans saved Germany. Suddenly loaded with American money because of the Charles Dawes Plan of 1924, the German economy roared. People found jobs, the middle class started to recover, and they chose to forget, rather than be angry, about World War I. In Germany, it was a bright new day. They even had a baby democracy in place with a president, a parliament, and a chancellor. 5. Democracies rot into dictatorship. But America couldn't save everyone. The rotten post-war economies in Europe made Europeans desperate. When people are desperate, they often want a strong man to take over the government and fix things now. Citizens are willing to give up their freedoms. In the pictures, we see Prime Minister Tojo of Japan, Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union, Hitler, and we see Italy's Benito Mussolini. Further, intermingled with these motives, some people simply want revenge. If the strong man gets in, then finally he'll inflict suffering on all the people the revenge seekers hate. Thus, a lot of European countries accepted dictators like Spain, Italy, and Russia, and worldwide, these dictators got a lot of praise, sometimes even from people in the United States, never a majority. After all, when the Depression hit in 1929, the dictators seemed to rescue their nations quickly, and then to get rich. The democracies, however, stayed poor. Now, we must acknowledge that in every single one of these cases, the dictatorships lied about their prosperity, and the books they released, those books were cooked. Japan, too, fell into this trap. when the military took over in 1931. They murdered several Japanese prime ministers in a row because these prime ministers wouldn't play ball with the thugs. And their democracy, Japan had a democracy, came to an end. How did the crash of 1929 affect Europe? The prosperity the Americans had engineered in Germany from 1924 to 1929 collapsed in the stock market crash of October 29, 1929. Suddenly, the Americans were out of money, and leaders everywhere could not work together. Instead of promoting trade, almost immediately they thought about taxing their allies. In other words, they wanted to raise tariffs. Look at the newspaper headlines. Over 1,000 economists asked President Hoover of the United States to veto the pending tariff bill. However, he signed it. Now, one man benefited greatly from the crash of 1929. For years, he had warned the Germans that their prosperity would vanish the minute the Americans stopped helping them out. But everyone ignored him and thought he was a Jew-hating crank. His party, the National Socialists, only received 2.6% of the vote in the 1928 elections. I believe their party came in ninth of the parties that were running. The crash, however, made him look like a prophet. Now people turned to Adolf Hitler. The next chapter will be Hitler's struggle, 1925 to 1945.